Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us John Thibault, who is founder and CEO of iLobby. Welcome to the program, John.
Yeah, hi Mike, how are you? I'm glad to be here, thanks.
Good. Hey, give us a little bit of your background and then what led you to found the business iLobby. And of course, we'll get into what it is and what some of the specifics are. But I always love to hear the story of, was there a pivotal point in your life or career that made you start something? And so many times you hear entrepreneurs say, "I needed X and I couldn't find it, so I started it."
Yeah, that's probably partly true. I think of myself as having a fairly eclectic career, and by that, I actually came out of UCLA Film School, worked in the entertainment industry, then worked in government affairs at MCA, which is Universal Studios, and was on the early founding team of eBay as VP of Marketing, which was a massive change in my life, and then VP of Financial Engines. And then over the last 7 or 8 years, as I was talking to friends, everybody was frustrated by politics. It didn't matter who they were. And so what happened was, if you look at a pivotal point, I looked at what I had learned when I was at MCA in terms of government affairs and dealing with politicians, and I realized that the information that the people at the top, the 1%, have is not shared, or folks just don't understand that they can do some of the same things. And that's what really caused me to think, you know what, it's easy to make lobbying available to more people, but how would that be done? And that was the challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a very common story of, things just kind of come to a head in someone's life and you say, hey, let me dip my toe in the water, and then it just blossoms from there. And let's clarify what is really meant by lobbying and what can be done even from the grassroots level, because I feel like so many times people hear the word, lobbyist or political lobbyist, and they think, the big pharma or the big money companies, but what difference can we make? Is it just like a pebble in the ocean?
Yeah, I think that's to me, it's a really interesting problem because it's what people refer to as a wicked problem, meaning it's so complex you can't get a resolution to it. When I say that the top companies lobby, they do it because they have 3 things in place. They don't have apathy among their executives, but they do have access and they are able to afford the service. The problem with most Americans and most people who are not in the top, either heads of companies or executive directors of large trade associations is the cost of lobbying is onerous. Think of it like $500,000 to $1 million a year just to get in the door. So nobody's going to do it. And small business faces the same problem. So what people do are less effective things. And they're the kinds of things that you see now where, folks demonstrate in the streets, they protest, they write to their congressman, they sign petitions, and all of these are moderately effective, but often they're not as precise as working with a real lobbyist to get something done.
Yeah, and I think that when you think about the barriers to entry in business, and businesses have to think about that when they're thinking of launching into a new market or a business at all. If the barrier to entry is too high, then maybe you don't proceed. If it's too low, maybe you don't proceed because there's too many competitors that can come in. So in this case, like you mentioned, $500,000 to $1 million or more to start a lobbying effort, and then the thing in the back of their mind is it really even going to matter at that point? So is there a feeling where even some of these companies that could write that check and initiate that campaign still feel like, what's lobbying going to do for us? Are they looking for a win, or are they looking to kind of just bring, a little bit higher level awareness than picketers and demonstrators and petitions?
I think they're looking for a win. I think at the top level, executives are looking to influence public officials because they care about their business and they realize there's a huge payback. There's a lot of some anecdotal but actually pretty quantitative information that has come out recently, and there's a group in New York called Strategas that actually keeps a lobbying index. And what they have found is that companies that lobby outperform the S&P almost by a really critical number of points. And so once you get in, it's a sticky thing, and then companies stay with it and say, you know what, we got to keep doing this. It's really building a relationship between business and government. That's really what it is, between the private sector and the public sector. And the one thing I want to add so people don't feel hopeless about this, or small business doesn't, is that over the last 5 or 6 years, I've now met a number of lobbyists who have decided to leave the large firms and start out on their own. So instead of looking at $500,000, they're saying, hey, we can do something with a small shop for 3 or 4 guys, and we'll do it for $5,000 a month. So part of this intersection is that the cost is coming down, and if people come together around issues, they are able actually to begin to make a difference.
You know, I think that's a really interesting point you just made there, and that may be a major shift in the whole entire, landscape, which is probably what you're striking at with iLobby. But what I hear is some of these major lobbyists that normally are for the elite of the elites because of the price tag, now they're coming and going freelance independent, and for the cost of like a nice PR firm, you can have some lobbying done. Well, if that smaller business is able to do that, they may get some wins, but I would, even from a marketing standpoint, say that small business could use their lobbying efforts while the lobbying's being done as a PR tool. So typically, I would suspect that the business says, okay, here's our cause, here's what you need to lobby for, okay, we're going to move ahead on that. But what if then that small business begins their own PR campaign, internal, external, social media, bringing awareness to the fact that they are lobbying, and now the people in their market, their clients, customers, prospects, strategic alliances, they're seeing them as more than just selling widgets or services. They're seeing them as kind of an influencer in their market, and now they're getting that more bang for their buck than just sending the lobbyist down to, the footsteps of the Capitol.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The solution that we're looking at iLobby is a little bit of a hybrid scenario. And the 3 things I have focused on are message, mass, and money. And by message, I look at this and say, you have to have a very clear, specific agenda or message about what it is you want to get done. And too often, business and individuals are very general. They just say, hey, I want justice, or I want this, or I want, free trade. And it's too broad. You have to get really specific down to the bill level. The other thing that's important is, and you just alluded to this, is you have to have a mass of people. The interesting part with a small company where they bring in, their executives and some of their customers, is that can be helpful. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this, but if I live in a district and my member of Congress does not sit on the Agriculture Committee, which she does not, she sits on a subcommittee on energy and commerce. If she does not sit on agriculture and I have a beef with the FDA or with some law that I want to get changed, I might discover that the chairman of the Agricultural Committee is really in Arkansas. And because of the way the representation works in Congress and with constituents, I can't go to him directly. However, if my mother, my customer, my partner, or I had another office in Arkansas, I could actually have them support me on a particular debate or issue, and then they in turn could go. So what you're doing is aggregating people from multiple districts to increase the grassroots effect, but you're doing it in a strategic way versus a random way. And then obviously the last part, which we touched on, was you can reduce the cost by everybody kicking in a little bit of money. And I've used this term before. I said if you had 30,000 people who said, look, we'll put in $20 to make this thing happen, which on a Kickstarter campaign isn't that much, you would have $600,000 and you could hire any lobbyist in Washington you want tomorrow.
Yeah, I think a major piece that you just brought up is something that's missed in business as well, and you from your marketing background can attest to that, which is who do you really want to serve? And you know what, that car dealer down the road, their target audience should not be anyone who drives a vehicle because it's way too broad. So what is that laser-focused target audience? So in this case, what's that laser-focused issue? So we've been talking about issues and the overall scope up till now. So now, what does iLobby do? What is the solution? What is the tool? And what is the win that it brings to people that recognize that they have this need?
Yeah, I'll start sort of broad and then drill down a little bit. I think of iLobby as a First Amendment company, and we empower voters to be heard and change laws by connecting them with politicians. So we do this through crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, so that they can improve their community, influence leaders, and impact the world. The question is, how does that happen? Well, you hear it if you watch the debates, that when politicians come together, they say we need to debate that topic. No one is right, no one is wrong, but allow people to come into an open debate where they can discuss an issue, get clear on it, and what we do is allow that open platform for people to have that discussion. Once the discussion reaches a threshold where you say, we have pretty good consensus on this, we've heard from the people who support it and the people who oppose it, we're just going to call the vote. People can then vote on this debate, you add up all the numbers, and if you have more winners than losers, theoretically you've won the debate. At that point, people can then say, look, I want to pledge a certain amount of money or funds to this, and then they can do that, and then they can match up with a lobbying firm whose practice area aligns with their particular issue. And then
all of that,
you delegate to the lobbyists at that point, but you're still working with them.
Yeah, and so all of that is facilitated through your platform.
That's correct, right.
So it's almost like crowdfunding meets political lobbying.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways to describe it, but that's absolutely true, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting,
and you feel like your voice is a little more heard than signing a petition or writing a letter to your congressman, which, both of those are needed, but sometimes people would feel, like, what is the point of that? So, let's talk a little bit more about the small business or the individual who hears this and goes, I do want my more of a voice to be heard in some of these issues I care about. What would it look like for them? How much traction could they get being able to get involved in the platform?
Yeah, I'm trying to make this really easy because I realize we have a pretty apathetic electorate. I've heard that something like 93 million people don't vote, which is stunning to me. But
yet those same 93 million will complain about the people that got in office.
Yeah, every time. Absolutely.
Yep.
So I have the book, How to Change a Law, which takes you through all the steps involved. If you go to the website, ilobby.co, what happens is you can actually just vote on somebody else's debate. So there's a handful of debates that are up there. Some of them relate to actual bills in Congress or in the state legislatures. And some of them are local, some of them are state issues, etc. So you can just come in and vote yes or no by reading a very short blurb on it. If you want, you can go the second step and add an argument and say, look, I have something to say, or I have a link, or I have a paper that I wrote, and you should read this because it gives you more ammunition to move forward. The interesting thing, too, is that when you log in or when you register, we know what your congressional district is. So as time goes on, you are going to continue to be matched with people who are in the right district or on the right issue, and then keep that alignment going forward. The thing that and then you can share this, of course, in social media. If a person said, look, I have a particular issue, I want to get something done, they could go in and create a debate, and it takes about a half an hour, maybe. It's 200 to 300 words. It's not that long. But it's literally a summary of what it is you intend to get done. And what we offer here is we're saying, I think people need to understand how to do this a little more elegantly. So we've added some videos and course and other things to help support them do that.
And
that's
so
what they do until they hit the point where they have a significant mass of people who say, okay, we'll put money in and let's get this going.
Do you have more people that are creating debates for a cause they want to push forward, or more people participating in some of the lobbying debates that are already out there.
Yeah, I think it's no different than a town hall. You have very few people who stand up and make themselves heard. So the numbers in terms of someone going to create a debate compared to those who are going to either follow, read, maybe share it, etc., is probably on the order of, 80-20 or 90-10. But not too different from a town hall. If you had 100 people, you know that only 5 or 10 people will get up and speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of people would be in the audience, and then a lot more would tune into the live broadcast if it was televised or online. So it's just all of those, kind of engagement. Here's something that comes to mind, and I wonder how accurate that it is regarding ethics. Is there anything that needs to be watched out for when you're considering these kinds of things, either participating in or funding? Is there anything that would need to be looked at for maybe even checking facts? Would you feel comfortable participating or commenting on or contributing to a debate that's on the platform and taking the facts at face value?
I believe in the wisdom of the crowd. I believe, and we see that online all the time anyway. Somebody is going to know if somebody is putting misinformation up there, and they will call them out on that. When I was at eBay, we had the same thing. We called it the fake Rolex problem. People would sell Rolexes. They weren't real. They would say, this is a $1,000 Rolex, but you can get it for $5. Well, you can kind of smell these things, and after a while you realize there's a problem. So I think that, folks have said to me you should have a moderator, but it's impossible for one person or even a group of people to moderate and understand and get to the truth of every issue, just as we have with the press today. It's really, really hard. But if you had a lot of people interested in a specific issue and they took it seriously and they knew that this is not an anonymous platform where people can just spam each other, you have to be identified. You can come in and say things that are reasonable. And in those forums where that authentication and transparency exists, I think you get a better quality of dialogue among the players.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and kind of that crowd-sourced thought can kind of kick in at that point, and then you kind of let the facts fall where they may, because I'm sure somewhere on the website is we're not endorsing or validating it's your decision to participate or not, and I think that's again kind of getting back to some of the thoughts about even social media today. People have the power of publishing in their pocket. Pocket publishing power. You pull out your phone and you can tweet all kinds of things or post anything you want. And it could be your opinion, and your opinion is your opinion. So I think that's really powerful that way. And it makes me think, too, how is this platform different than petitions or town halls? Because I know that those two can be a little passive. You can sit back in a town hall. You can just sign your name to a petition. But where does this take it to the next level?
Yeah, let me address petitions first of all. I have no problem with them whatsoever, and I really encourage there's a lot of companies playing in this field of government tech space, the GovTech space. And Change.org, for instance, and I don't have a problem mentioning other companies, they've been around for a long time. They have over 100 million people signing petitions around the world, which is an amazing platform from that standpoint. But when I have talked to politicians, they roll their eyes when they say, oh, yes, we had a petition signed by 3,000 people. They don't care because it's a boilerplate petition authored by one person. A bunch of people signed it. They don't know what they said, and you can't authenticate the individuals. It's no different than a demonstration. When a congressman looks on the Washington Mall or New York when we had Occupy Wall Street, and they see all these guys protesting, they say, oh, isn't that wonderful? It's free speech. It's great. You know why? It's not their constituent, so they actually don't care. Because they look at this mass of people and they say, I don't know if he's from New York 2, California 3, Florida 7, right? They're looking at it from their congressional district, and the people are not identified. And that's a big problem for the politician from the authentication side, because they will only deal with their constituent. And that's where a petition platform begins to fall apart. On the town hall side, it's a little more specific because you're actually there. You stand up, you say, hey, my name is John Thibault, I live at this address, I'm in your district, and they mark that down, they recognize it, they know they can always follow up with you. The difference is, as you've seen if you've attended any, there's a lot of, dialogue going on. The politician receives the input, they put their notes together, and then they then go back and talk to other special interest groups and trade groups and businesses and triangulate to try to get more information. And you may or may not have further access to them, or, you have 2 minutes to talk and then you're done. That's pretty much it. So there isn't a lot of follow-up, and there isn't an actionable solution to making your point of view more salient and powerful than anybody else's. And 2 minutes really isn't very much anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's an excellent point, too, about a petition, although it's needed to kind of start the ball rolling, but it's a bunch of names, and you can't validate it, whereas on your platform, you have profiles and names and probably even an IP address to at least show that it was from that state, even though it can't, tie back to the person easily, but at least you could say, look at all, here's a cluster of information that is validated and a little bit better than a name on a piece of paper. Have you, could you think of a success story of someone or some cause or group that has created a debate and gotten some, traction and movement, and what would that look like?
Yeah, we're still pretty early on at this. There's one instance locally here where this debate was initiated with not an individual, but with a town here in California, just south of San Francisco. So the city manager and I spoke, and I actually spoke to the council members, and they wanted to get input from the residents, just as they would with a survey or anything else. And they wanted to get input regarding whether or not they should add a particular, a cafe. It was a non-contentious issue. A cafe in a new town center that they're thinking of building. And but I say it's not contentious, but it's contentious for a lot of people who don't want any development and any building. So that one actually did okay in terms of we had dynamic information coming in over a very short period of time, and we had comments on both sides. So again, unlike Twitter where it's just a stream of consciousness in one thread, this is broken up. So the pros are on one side, the arguments against are on the other side. They can look at them, see what they all are, and understand it. And in that case, it helped them come to a conclusion about whether or not the residents of the town wanted to do that. So that was helpful. There are a handful of others in the area where they have not yet put an issue on the platform, but I think that they're sitting in the middle of a situation where it coll be. And I'll try to keep this short. There's a next-gen problem with the FAA where years ago they said, look, we want to pack more planes in at lower levels, flying slower over neighborhoods so that we can meet the new requirements with regard to changes in airport delivery of planes and passengers, et cetera, and to increase traffic. So the FAA implemented these in a handful of cities. I believe it was in Charlotte, Chicago, Phoenix, and San Francisco, and perhaps a few others. And again, I live near San Francisco, and what happened is in some of the neighborhoods that were residential, they're now discovering that 747s at 5 in the morning are flying, 1,000 feet over their homes and rumbling the entire neighborhood. And thousands of people are in an uproar. But what they've done is they ended up hiring an aviation attorney and then somebody to do decibel checking and sound checking, and they're concerned that their property values are going to go down. I mean, just all kinds of problems and health problems, et cetera. And what they neglected to realize that Phoenix had the same problem and went through the same issues, and it's a pretty wide and common problem. So when I looked at it, I said, we should look at the press and then realize how would you approach this. So they have worked from the bottom up, working with local, congressmen, local mayors, et cetera, in this situation. And after 3.5 years, nothing has happened. So I was saying, you got to look at the global situation, understand that you have a shared problem with these other cities and towns, and the problem lies with the FAA recommending what the flight paths are going to be. So wouldn't it make sense to talk to the chairman of the Committee on Aviation? And I normally don't get into the political left-right thing, but I think this is appropriate here. The chairman of the Committee on Aviation is a Republican in New Jersey. So if you think about it, why would he care about what all the Democratic voters who are not in his district care about what the FAA does? You know?
Yeah, it should be an easy win.
I think it's, you know, it's funny in a sense, but it's interesting because people tend to just bash their head against the problem but not look at it strategically and realize that they could have learned so much from Chicago, Charlotte, Phoenix, etc., before they started spending money and drilling their way up from the bottom.
Yeah, so it gives them a voice. It gives them a little bit of more, condensed momentum. So I think that's a really big win as well. What's the best way that people can learn more and see what some of the debates and causes are on your platform and get involved?
Yeah, the simplest way is just to go to the website. It is ilobby.co or www.ilobby.co, so it's not .com. And you can look at it, and I think, you know, I say that I show the book on there too, because the book walks you through what you need to do. And what I found was, again, this has prompted me to write the book called How to Change a Law. It's available on Amazon, in Audible, etc. And it walks you through what you need to do in a pretty simple format. I think if you just go to the website, you can sign up, get on the list, and then you'll end up receiving information about what to do next. But there is a little bit of a learning curve. I suppose for me that isn't the case now because, you know, I worked in government affairs, so I was around this. And I find that politicians and executives understand it implicitly, whereas average folks have never been exposed to it. So it's sort of a new thing. It's a new concept, and it takes a little bit of hand-holding.
Excellent. So ilobby.co, and you can click on how iLobby works and learn how the process can benefit a cause, or you can get involved. So thank you so much for your time today on the interview, John. I really enjoyed getting to know you and your cause.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.